You ever notice how the moment you stop chasing, people suddenly start paying attention to you? It's almost unfair, isn't it? How silence speaks louder than effort, how distance cuts deeper than words, and how your boundaries, those invisible lines you draw, can make a woman look at you with a kind of respect she didn't even know she had for you. Because here's the truth most men never realize. Attraction isn't built on looks, or money, or charisma. It's built on the quiet power of a man who refuses to abandon himself. A man who knows exactly what he stands for, and who won't shrink just to be chosen. Welcome to Be Feminine, where we explore the psychology behind human desire, self-worth, and the emotional depth that most people never talk about. If you're ready to understand yourself on a deeper level, make sure you subscribe because this journey changes everything. Now listen closely. Every powerful boundary you set is like a message carved into stone. A message that says, I love you, but I love myself more. And high-value women feel this instantly. They feel the weight of your self-respect, the emotional discipline, the stability of a man who isn't starving for approval. A man who desires connection, but does not depend on it. You'll notice something strange about these boundaries. They don't push a high-value woman away. They pull her nearer. Because women, real women, are drawn to strength they can trust. Not muscles, not flexing, but a man's emotional spine, the quiet, unwavering truth that he cannot be bent by fear, loneliness, or a craving for attention. Your boundaries become the way you teach her how to treat you. Not by yelling, not by chasing, not by explaining yourself over and over until your voice breaks. No, your energy does the teaching, your silence does the reminding, and your absence, when it must be given, does the healing. A high-value woman notices when you refuse to negotiate your dignity. She notices when you don't respond to disrespect just because you're scared to lose her. She notices when you don't reward mixed signals with affection, when you don't tolerate inconsistency just because you're emotionally invested, and when you don't crumble simply because she pulls back. In that moment, right there, she sees something extremely rare. A man who feels deeply, who loves intensely, but who is not afraid to walk away if his heart is not honored. That kind of man is unforgettable. Because boundaries are not about being cold, they're about being clear. They are the quiet rules you live by, the promise you've made to yourself, the emotional contract you refuse to break for anyone. A boundary says, I want you, but I won't abandon my soul just to keep you close. And trust me, that line hits a woman on a level she can't explain. She feels safer around you. She feels more feminine around you. She respects you without you even asking. And suddenly, your presence becomes something she values, not something she assumes will always be there. Because a man with boundaries isn't controlled by desire. He chooses, he evaluates, he observes, and he walks with the kind of calm masculinity that makes a woman think, losing him would hurt. That's the psychology nobody teaches you. The boundary itself doesn't attract her. The man you have to become to set that boundary. That's what pulls her in. You don't realize this yet, but every time you set a boundary, you shift the energy in the room. It's subtle, silent, almost invisible, but she feels it. A high-value woman notices the exact moment you stop over-explaining yourself. She notices when you stop negotiating with disrespect. She notices when you no longer respond just because your heart feels restless at midnight. She notices when you choose peace over attention and dignity over drama. And something happens to her psychology, slowly, quietly, powerfully. She begins to see you differently, not as a man who needs her validation to feel whole, but as a man who is whole even without her validation. That shift, that change in the air, is the beginning of real attraction. You see, most men try to attract women through performance. They try too hard, speak too much, give too fast, open too wide. But boundaries? Boundaries are not performance. Boundaries are identity. They reveal the truth of who you are when no one is watching. They show your standards even before you speak them. They expose the real substance behind your presence. A boundary is the moment you say no, not to punish her, but to protect you. A boundary is when you pull your energy back, not in a manipulative way, but in a way that reminds you that your emotional space matters too. A boundary is when you walk away from someone who keeps you waiting, not because you're impatient, but because you respect your time. And a high-value woman finds this magnetic, not because she wants a man who is hard to get, but because she wants a man who is hard to replace. The moment she realizes you can survive without her is the moment she starts imagining a life where she wants to keep you. There's a beautiful tension that forms when a man like you stands firm in who he is. Not harsh, not cold, just grounded, just stable, just real. It's the kind of masculine energy that makes a woman soften, makes her lean in, makes her mirror your respect back to you. But here's the dark psychology underneath all this. A woman cannot attach to a man she cannot respect. She can desire you, she can flirt, she can enjoy your attention, she can even sleep with you. But if she does not respect you, she will never choose you. And respect is born in the space where your boundaries live. When you say, "I won't let my kindness be used against me," she feels it. When you say, "I don't repeat myself twice," she remembers it. When you say, "My time is precious," she values it. And the moment you stop rewarding inconsistent behavior, that's when she begins giving you consistency without you asking. Because your boundaries tell her everything her instincts need to know. This man is not desperate. He is selective. This man is not seeking approval. He is seeking alignment. This man is not emotionally impulsive. He is emotionally sovereign. A woman is drawn to a man whose world does not collapse without her. A man who chooses her, but is not owned by the choice. A man who loves her, but is not blinded by love. A man who stays, but only if staying feels respectful to his soul. That man feels like peace wrapped in fire, soft enough to love, strong enough to protect, and wise enough to walk away when needed. This is why boundaries attract high-value women, because you're not just creating rules, you're creating a reality where she feels safe, desired, and grounded. And the deeper she feels this, the deeper her attraction becomes. There's a certain calm you carry when you finally understand your worth. Not the loud kind, not the kind you need to announce or prove, but a quiet confidence, like a storm that knows its own power and doesn't need to roar to be felt. High-value women sense this calm instantly. It's not arrogance, it's not ego, it's emotional precision, the ability to know exactly what you will accept and exactly what you won't. Most men never reach this point. They spend their lives trying to impress women instead of trying to understand themselves. They give too much, too soon, believing generosity will make them irresistible. They tolerate too much, believing patience will make them lovable. They accept too little, believing that suffering is somehow noble. But the truth is simple and brutal. A woman cannot love you for the parts of you that don't love yourself. She feels it when you're scared to express what you want. She feels it when you put her needs above your own, even when she didn't ask you to. She feels it when your silence comes from fear, not strength. And she feels it when you stay in situations that quietly break you, just to avoid being alone. There's no attraction in that, only pity. And pity is poison. But when you set boundaries from a place of self-love instead of fear, everything changes. You respond slower, not because you're playing games, but because you're evaluating energy. You say no more often, not because you're difficult, but because you're no longer willing to betray your peace. You walk away faster, not because you're cold, but because you've learned that losing yourself is the worst kind of heartbreak. And here's the psychology most people never talk about. A woman respects a man who respects the consequences of his own decisions. If you break your own boundaries, she will too. If you tolerate disrespect, she will offer more. If you chase after being ignored, she will ignore you deeper. If you reward inconsistency, her inconsistency becomes the new normal. But when you stand firm, when you make your emotional standards non-negotiable, she begins to feel something rare: emotional accountability. Suddenly, she becomes mindful of how she speaks to you, how she texts you, how she treats your time, how she behaves when she's upset. Not because she's scared of losing you, but because she's aware of the kind of man you are. A man who can love deeply without losing himself. A man who can commit without collapsing. A man who can be soft without being weak. A man whose presence brings order instead of chaos. This is irresistible to a high-value woman, because she spent her whole life dealing with men who confuse attachment with love, men who confuse attention with loyalty, men who confuse desire with devotion. And then you appear, calm, intentional, steady, a man whose boundaries don't cage her, but ground her. There's something intoxicating about a man who doesn't flinch emotionally, who doesn't crumble at the first sign of tension, who doesn't lose his center just because he wants her. That kind of masculinity makes a woman soften, because she finally feels like she's with someone who isn't just emotionally available, he's emotionally aligned. A man who knows himself is a man she can trust, and a man she can trust is a man she can fall for. With every boundary you set, you make her feel something most men never give her: security, passion, and emotional clarity. And the more she feels it, the more she gravitates toward you. There comes a moment in every man's life when he realizes something painfully simple. People don't leave because you weren't enough. People leave because you abandoned your boundaries to keep them close. And high-value women? They notice the men who refuse to do that. You see, the world has conditioned men to believe that love is about sacrifice, that devotion means losing yourself, that being a good man means tolerating anything just to keep the peace. But the reality is much darker and much more beautiful. A woman feels safest with the man who respects himself more than he craves her approval, because a man who respects himself will never weaponize love, never beg for attention, never collapse under emotional pressure, never turn passion into possession. A man like that becomes a sanctuary, not a storm, and that is rare. When a high-value woman meets you, she pays attention to the subtleties, not your clothes, not your status, but your emotional posture. She watches how you react when your boundaries are tested, because they will be tested. Not out of malice, but instinct. A woman tests a man's boundaries the same way she tests the strength of a bridge before crossing it. She wants to know it won't collapse under weight. And the men who crumble? The men who fold the moment she pulls back? The men who trip over themselves trying to fix everything immediately? Those are the men she cannot trust emotionally. But the man who stays calm, who doesn't panic, who doesn't chase after tension, who doesn't abandon his standards just because he feels something, that man stands out like fire in the dark, because boundaries are not walls, they are doors, and you decide who gets to walk through them. A boundary is when you don't respond instantly to a disrespectful message. A boundary is when you don't keep explaining yourself to someone who doesn't listen. A boundary is when you don't apologize for the standards that protect your heart. A boundary is when you stop showing loyalty to people who show you patterns. And here's the deepest truth. When a woman truly respects you, she doesn't fear your boundaries. She aligns with them. She matches your consistency. She mirrors your energy. She becomes more intentional, more gentle, more present. Because your boundaries make her feel emotionally safe, like she's not with a boy who reacts, but a man who responds. There's a certain gravity to a man with emotional discipline, a presence that pulls her in without force, a strength that doesn't need to shout, a softness that doesn't make him weak. It's the duality she can't resist, the fire of your standards and the calm of your heart. This combination is what makes her look at you and think, this man is different. Because you're not controlled by desire, you're guided by purpose. You're not giving her your whole world on the first date. You're letting her earn pieces of it slowly. You're not afraid of losing her, because you've learned the truth most men run from. A woman can't truly love a man who doesn't love himself enough to set limits. Your boundaries teach her how to love you. They teach her how to respect you. They teach her how to show up for you. And the more she sees that you refuse to betray yourself, the more she wants to stay close. Because in a world full of men who are emotionally chaotic, inconsistent, or desperate, A man with boundaries feels like peace. And peace is addictive. There's something almost magnetic about a man who knows where he's going, not because he's loud about it, not because he's trying to convince anyone, but because his life moves with a quiet, intentional rhythm. High-value women are drawn to that rhythm, not because they want to control it, but because they want to flow with it. And your boundaries? They are the tempo. They're what keep the wrong people out and the right people close. But here's the part most men never understand. A boundary is not about controlling her behavior. It's about controlling your access to chaos. It's the moment you tell yourself, I have suffered enough. I have chased enough. I have explained enough. I have given enough. It's that turning point when you finally choose your peace over your patterns. Because attraction doesn't grow in emotional chaos, it grows in emotional clarity. And clarity comes from a man who knows what he will and will not tolerate. A high-value woman feels this clarity from the way you speak. You say things like, let me think about it, because you no longer make emotional decisions instantly. You say, I'm not comfortable with that, because you refuse to swallow disrespect just to avoid conflict. You say, if this continues, I'll step back, because your self-respect is no longer negotiable. And these simple sentences, calm, grounded, steady, they hit her differently. Not like threats, not like manipulation, but like truth, like a man who is not playing games, but who refuses to play himself. There's a deep psychological pull in a man who can walk away without slamming the door, who can hold space without demanding attention, who can express his needs without raising his voice. A man like that becomes unforgettable because he makes her feel something other men don't, the weight of accountability. A woman who respects you becomes more careful with your heart. She becomes more patient with your triggers. She becomes more intentional with her words. She becomes more consistent with her energy. Not because she's afraid of losing you, but because she's afraid of losing access to the version of herself she becomes when she's with you. Your boundaries inspire her to rise, to match your stability, your clarity, your emotional honesty. And here's the twist most men never see coming. When you have strong boundaries, you stop attracting women who drain you. You stop tolerating women who confuse you. You stop entertaining women who breadcrumb you. Instead, you attract women who respect themselves, women who value connection, women who understand emotional reciprocity, women who are healed enough to appreciate a man like you. Because a woman who is secure, a woman who is aligned, a woman who is emotionally healthy, she doesn't fear a man with boundaries. She cherishes him. She knows his boundaries aren't barriers, they're protection. Not protection from her, but protection from the version of you that would hurt both of you. And that's the deepest psychological truth of all. Boundaries don't push the right woman away. They guide her closer. They give her direction. They give her safety. They give her permission to be soft with a man who won't take advantage of her softness. Your boundaries are the quiet proof that you're not just a man who wants love. You're a man who's ready for it. And when a high-value woman realizes she's dealing with a man who protects his heart, she feels safe enough to offer hers. This is the moment attraction deepens into devotion, desire deepens into connection, interest deepens into intention. Because a man with boundaries isn't just desirable, he's unforgettable. If you want to keep evolving, if you want to keep learning the emotional codes that most men never discover, then subscribe, join the community, stay connected. Your growth starts here, and it doesn't end tonight. And remember this. Your boundaries are not the reason people leave. They're the reason the right ones stay. I'll see you in the next video.